episode of Warhammer 40K. My name is Nick and I'm here to help you take your Warhammer projects from the craft bench to the tabletop. I would like to invite you to join me on a journey over the next couple of months. Along the way, I'm going to be showing you everything it takes to go from purchasing your first models to putting together a battle report quality game of 40K right in your own home. I'm going to be focusing on quick, easy, cheap, and beginner-friendly methods to create and paint everything you need to play the amazing game of Warhammer 40,000. So whether you're brand new to the hobby in 9th edition, or you're a seasoned veteran looking to avoid the crowds and risks of going to a game store right now, I hope you will find some of these techniques useful to help bring your gaming experiences to life. So if you choose to accept this call to adventure, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on any of the fun. Let's get started. Okay, so on episode 1 of my series from the workbench to the tabletop, we're going to be building the major structures for our board of terrain first. We're going to be building this junkyard style themed terrain. They're going to be junkyard barricades. These are great for all sorts of armies, especially if you play something like orcs. You can definitely dress these up with orc insignias or things like that. You can change up the color scheme. You can change different panels to make them different colors. I wanted to keep the color scheme that we're doing today really simple, quick, easy, and beginner friendly. This is absolutely a beginner, easy project. It takes very little equipment, very easy to get supplies. In fact, the base of each of these structures is made with the sprues that come with the models that you build from Warhammer 40K. The paint job, it's not the best paint job in the world, but it's really quick, easy, beginner friendly. Definitely a speed paint. I got these painted up in no time at all. So if you look at it, this is going to be the largest structure. It's got 2 playable floors with windows on either side. It's got a playable staircase coming up the side that fits models. It's got a support stand. It's a great centerpiece. If you're trying to fill out a full-size board, especially in 9th edition, you're going to want to build 2 of these as your centerpieces. Now in 8th edition, it was very common to have one big centerpiece piece of terrain. However, with the new rules being once you're inside of a piece of terrain like this, then you're all of a sudden targetable and can be shot or can shoot out of from any direction from that center terrain. Then basically, as soon as a unit gets on that big center piece of terrain, they have full field of view 360 around the field, which can lead to some bad problems if you're against a shooting army. So I would actually recommend making 2 of these as centerpieces that can oppose each other. So even if you're inside of one, the other one is still blocking that entire line of sight outside of that building. It kind of prevents people from just being able to shoot the whole board from the centerpiece. So I would recommend making 2 of these for a full-size board. This is a medium-sized structure. It's got 1 playable floor as well. Windows on the top and 2 playable floors down below and above. The ladder is not really playable, it's just there for looks. You can kind of make however many of these you want, anywhere from 2 to 4, depending on how busy you want your table to be. These are great obscuring terrain, line of sight blocking terrain. There's no windows or playable walls, but they're really quick and easy to make. Once again, it depends on how many you want, but anywhere from 2 to 4 of these are going to be great as well. And then the last one are these little just junk barricade walls. These are also really great for setting up all sorts of different things. If you make a bunch of these, as many as you want to make, as many as you have the time and energy to make, then it really gives you the versatility to set up all sorts of different battlefields, kind of dictate line of sight and dictate movement on the battlefield. So you can make as many of these as you want, and you can line them up as walls. You can put them together and form different angles and shapes. They're really versatile, and you could even butt them up against the bigger structures to build whatever you want with them. So these really make it really versatile, and these will be the major structures for the terrain board we're going to be building for this series. In a future episode, we're going to build some other cool things like rough terrain and things like that to make the battle board more interesting and fun, but these are going to be the main structures for it. So I'll teach you how to do it from beginning to end. It's really simple, easy, beginner friendly. Like I said, they're not the most beautiful things in the world, but for the amount of time and effort it goes to put into them, it's really great value for your time and effort and money. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first step is the least fun part of the whole project. You're going to take your sprue clippers
and we're going to clip all the little bits and pieces that stick out on either edge of the sprues to make sure we have a nice clean surface to work with.
Okay guys, so I'm about halfway through snipping all of the little sharp pieces and the parts sticking out of either side of all of the sprues, and I'm not going to lie, I was getting a little tired of it. My hand was starting to cramp, and I've done a set of these before and I really just wasn't feeling it today. So the lazy side of my brain started thinking, how can I make this go faster? How can I take these off without taking off every little one individually? And I came up with an idea that I honestly thought wouldn't work, but I had the access to the tool to try it out, so I figured why not give it a shot. And honestly, it worked awesome. It worked even better. It got a better finish than the slow way. The only downside to it is it's using a tool that a lot of people might not have access to, but I wanted to show you what I did. So if you have access to one of these, you can take the longest time portion of this project and really just narrow it down and get through it a lot quicker and a lot easier with much less stress on your hands. So let me show you what I did. Hey guys, so I hope the audio in the video is okay out here. I didn't bring out all my studio lights or my microphone for doing this work outside, and I live right by a train track. There's a train going by, but I wanted to just get through this real quick. So when you take the sprues, the first thing you want to do is you just want to make sure that there aren't any ones that really stick out really far. So this one has about 5 little pegs that stick out like ½ an inch, way further than everything else. So we're just going to want to clip off those real quick. And then, of course, anytime you're doing sanding, especially with plastic, you're going to want to make sure you're doing safety first. So you got your goggles and you got a mask. Everybody should have a mask around right now. So all you're going to do, you're going to keep your hand away from the side you're working on. I've got this on a cutting board. You're just going to hold it down nice and tight. This is 40 grit sandpaper, so you want really coarse to start out with. We're just going to turn it on, power through it. Okay, after we're done with the first sanding, I went all the way around both surfaces, and you want to kind of hit the edges as well to get rid of a little bit of that bevel. So to get later on when we go to put these together, we'll have a little bit more of a flat surface to work together. We're going to switch over to 120 grit to try to get a little bit of the roughness that the sanding with the heavy grit sandpaper left behind. So we'll go ahead and put on a new sandpaper. Like I said, I'm using 120 grit. Whatever you have should work.
Now we're back inside and all of our sprues have been either clipped all the way down or sanded down, so all of the things sticking out on either side have been trimmed off. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and assemble the main structure of each of the terrain pieces. So for today we're going to be showing you, like I said, 4. And so for the first size, we're going to do the big one. It's going to need 3 of the big sprues, 1 for each wall and 1 for the floor of the second floor. We're going to do a medium-sized structure, and so we'll need 3 of these medium-sized sprues, a smaller obscuring terrain that's only going to need 2 of the small ones, and then a barricade using the smallest tiny sprues that come for special characters. So let's go ahead and get started. For all of the stuff we're going to be doing today in this project, I want it to stay pretty beginner friendly, so we're going to be using hot glue for just about everything. This hot glue that I'm using is actually the Gorilla brand hot glue, which should stick a little bit better to the plastic of the sprue. And if you did use the sanding method, the little bit of texture that's on the plastic from sanding will help that glue adhere even better. Either way, we're going to add on something else to make sure it's nice and strong and that bond doesn't break. So we'll go ahead and start with the biggest of the structures. So we'll place one of them off to the side. What we're going to do is we're going to take our hot glue and we're going to run a strip all the way down this length. So remember, when you're working with bigger sections of hot glue, it's important to work quickly so that it doesn't cool before you push the pieces together. So we got a strip running along one side. We're aiming for a 90-degree angle, roundabout. It's okay if it's a little bit off, because this does have a little bit of play to it. So we're going to give that a second to cool. We'll go ahead and stand it up. We can use the lines on your cutting mat if you want to get it as close as you can to 90 degrees. And then we're going to go ahead and reinforce those joints with zip ties. So these are tiny, fairly small zip ties. I got a whole big pack of these at the dollar store. So if you don't have any, they're pretty easy to get and they're not going to cost you much money. So we'll go ahead and put one at the top. One at the bottom. And we'll go ahead and put one in the middle. So for a lot of types of terrain, you wouldn't really be able to get away with doing something like this because it would show in the end product. But with the way that we're going to be decorating this into a junkyard themed orc type terrain, anything that shows through the decorations on the outside is going to blend right in with everything else. It's not going to mess with the final aesthetic. If you're worried about strength, we can go ahead and reinforce that joint again with one more little strip of hot glue down the inside. Just kind of running it right up and down that joint. And so I haven't had any durability issues with these at all, and I have manhandled them a little bit. So once our two walls are completed, we're going to go ahead and add in the second floor. So with the new terrain rules of 9th edition, I wanted to kind of focus on making some terrain that could really take advantage of all of the new rules for terrain versus just having line of sight blocking things. So this is going to actually have two different playable floors on it, and we're also going to be building some either stairs or ladders to get up to the second floor. With the terrain rules, that's not actually necessary. If it has the right keywords, the models can move up and down without them. But I like the aesthetic of it, and one of the versions we're going to be doing will actually be playable, so the minis can actually stand on the stairs going up. So we're going to be breaking down a lot of these edges to make it look more ruined and kind of haphazardly built, like you would see standard orc terrain being made in the lore. And so what we're going to be doing is, before you put these sprues up, you know, all the sprues from GW, they have all sorts of different patterns. A lot of the ones that are going to be better than even the ones I have that are a lot more straight lines and less squigglies like this, if you have those in hand, they're going to be kind of better to use than these. But these work just fine. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to look at the pattern on the sprue that you have and kind of imagine where you want to cut out a section that's going to make sense with all of the lines that are there, so that you can cut it out without messing up the structural integrity of it. So we're going to be kind of doing a scattered, staggered cut across, and I'm just going to kind of plan out my path ahead of time to make sure I don't take out any parts that we want to keep for stability. And then we're just going to grab our snips, and we're just going to kind of go across, cutting it out. It's okay if there's some pieces that are just hanging out. It's going to just look like rebar or pieces of metal sticking out of the structure. All right, that's looking pretty good. And then what we're going to do is we're going to attach this on with with hot glue as well. You can kind of give yourself a little bit of play. You want to make sure you have enough space underneath it that even some of the bigger character models should be able to fit through. It's okay if something bigger like a dreadnought isn't going to fit. That's just one less place that they should be going anyways. And so you're going to kind of look around here and see if there's any good spots that are going to have a lot of contact points across for you to glue to. So there's a spot about right here where I'm going to be getting a whole bunch of contact for my glue. And we're going to go ahead, and once again, you want to work quickly and just run that strip all the way across. Once again, with all the stuff that we're going to put on to decorate this and the junky style of this terrain anyways, it's not as important to be neat with the hot glue as a lot of other types of terrain, because the excess glue isn't going to mess with the aesthetic too much. You can always paint it up to look like rust. Working quickly, we'll go ahead and push that right into the corner, and then bring in either edge and make sure you're getting nice contact. Once that's dried, we're going to go ahead and reinforce it again with the zip ties. It's kind of up to you how many of these you put on. The more you put on, the more stable and strong your finished product is going to be. No reason to overdo it though, just a few on each edge should work just fine. If you can hear that loud crunching in the background, my dog decided that filming was the perfect time for him to go enjoy a snack. We'll go ahead and put one more right here in the corner. And we're gonna go ahead and wrap this one through the sprue that's for the floor and across both sides of the corner to just kind of tie all three pieces together with one zip tie. And so this has still got a long ways to go before the finished product, but this is gonna be the main sub-assembly, the main structure of what we're gonna be building. Okay, for the other ones, the medium-sized structure is going to follow that exact same format, using 2 of them for walls, 1 of them for the floor. The small structure is going to just be the walls. There's not going to be a playable second floor just because of the size of it. And the last one is just going to be a single piece standing up on a base. I'm going to make the base out of MDF, or excuse me, I'm probably going to actually use medium weight chipboard, and it's just going to be sitting on top and mounted, and you can make a bunch of these as barricade walls. Let's go ahead and prep the buildings for decoration. So first thing we're gonna wanna do is we're just gonna wanna go around and snip off all of the ends of the zip ties and get it nice and close. And then we're going to do two other things before we get started. We're going to break down some of these big square edges to make it look more like junk terrain, kind of going down just like we did with the floor. And then we're going to open up some spots where we're going to put windows. So our ludas or shootas, whatever we got up on top, has a nice line of sight to be shooting at things. So we'll go ahead and start by breaking down some of the edges first. We'll kind of keep this first section on the big one flat, so this window right here has plenty of room to work. And we'll go ahead and break this one down in the same type of way that we did with the floor. Now, because there's not really any weight bearing or anything on this section, it's not as big of a deal to worry about your path or leaving anything structurally sound, because this is just kind of part of the wall and it's going to get reinforced with a lot of the junk that we put on it. We'll do the same thing on the other side. We'll start about here. And once again, any bits that you leave sticking up is just going to look like steel beams or something like that sticking up out of the structure. And actually, I think I want to take this a little bit further. All right, that looks pretty good. Now to open up some windows. So we can have some windows down here if we want, and we're gonna go ahead and put some on these 2 areas right here. So we're just going to be covering up the bottoms and the tops and the sides with some of the junk. So we just want to clear out the sprue that's in the middle so it doesn't block the line of sight with the window. When you're doing this, you want to kind of picture where you want the window to be, and you want to leave some pieces of the sprue sticking up so we have something to glue to for the junk. That looks pretty good there. We'll do the same thing right here. Okay, so I didn't want to cut off too much right here because I wanted to, I'm going to reattach some junk right here, maybe some of the popsicle sticks or the coffee stir, something with a little bit more structural integrity to kind of secure this loose piece. I didn't want to take any more of this because I didn't want it to be too weak here. We can probably get rid of this right here though. That should give us enough of a window. I don't even think you actually technically need the windows with the rules, but it kind of makes it look more realistic. If we want to add in a window down here, we'll just do the same thing. So you want to think about the height of the miniatures and where they would actually see out of. So we'll go ahead and get rid of this piece. All right, that should give us plenty to look through. And we'll go ahead and keep it even and do it over here as well. All right, looks pretty good. So we'll go ahead and do the same type of thing with each of the other structures. The other small, or the medium-sized one, we'll pretty much do it exactly the same. The one that doesn't have a floor, obviously we don't need to worry about windows as much. We're gonna use this sort of more of as a line of sight blocking terrain. So we're just gonna go ahead and kind of break down some of the edges. So now we'll go ahead and attach the sides of the I-beam together. We're just going to use hot glue for this for sake of easiness. If you wanted to make it a little bit better, you could use PVA glue, white glue. The nice thing about the I-beams though is any excess that comes out of the sides is just sort of going to look like a weld that you would see on an actual one. So we'll go ahead and try not to put too much. Just run that strip down. Try to get it right in the center. And we'll do the same thing for the other side. Using a fairly light trigger finger here, you don't want too much coming out at a time. There we go. So we got our nice little beam here. This is a little bit on the thicker side. If you wanted to go a little bit narrower, that would be fine too. And then we're gonna find a good spot to attach it onto the structure. So if we look for somewhere that has a square, if you have one of those on your sprue, that's perfect because you can butt it up against two sides. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna mark out where we want it, and we're gonna place a little notch in the I-beam itself so it'll fit up against the, so the sprue will fit up into the slot. So we'll go ahead and mark that. We're just gonna take our knife and carve it out. Don't want to put too much pressure here. And the tricky part is getting the side cut. So take your time. If you have an X-Acto knife, that might be a little bit better for this than the full-size cutter. Let's test it out. All right, looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and put on some hot glue. Put it into place. Oh, forgot the edge. Want to make sure it's positioned well, flat on the table. And there we have it. Go ahead and put on a set of stairs. We want to make sure that the stairs are big enough that we can fit miniature bases on them. So the way I did this is I'll go ahead and measure the height of where I want to place the stairs. So I'm going to have them running up this wall and butting up against here. So I want to measure this height, and it's about 4 1/4 inches to the top of it. And so if I want 4 stairs, we're going to divide 4 1/4 by 4, and that should give us 1 1/16 inch stairs. So I measured out this grid on the medium weight chipboard. That's the sturdier stuff. Each one of these squares is 1 1/16 inch. If you put those 4 together in each direction, that's going to give us a total of 4 1/4. So you can do stairs that don't have an even rise and run like this, but keeping the rise and run even like this makes it a lot easier to measure out and do the math. So we have the center line that goes through the center. If you're connecting the corners of each of the boxes. So we're going to go 1 up from that and 1 down from that. And we're going to draw a line kind of connecting the edges of each of those boxes. So 1 here and 1 here. Oh, just kidding. 1 here and 1 here. Sorry about that. And so this section right here is going to give us our stair risers. And so all of this is excess. All this is excess. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut out along both of these lines. And then we're going to cut out just on the top side this area here. And that's going to give us a stair runner that we'll use as a template to cut the other. Okay. And last cut here. All right, so this is going to be our stair runner. Now we're just going to cut out these 3. So these are really nice shortcuts. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my scissors. So you want to be cutting right at the closest part of the scissors where it's the strongest for getting through this tough material. And it's okay if you go a little bit past the intersection just to make sure that it cuts away clean. So we'll cut out this one, this one, and this one. And then we can go ahead and put a T on this for template. So I'm only going to be building one set of stairs today, so I'm probably just going to use this for the build. But if you were going to be doing multiple sets of stairs for an entire table worth of terrain using this style, or if you wanted to save this for future use for other sets of stairs, although the height might be the wrong height, you can use this as a template to cut the other ones out. So we'll go ahead and take this template, and we're going to take this long edge, and we're going to save ourselves as many cuts as we can. So we're going to line that edge up against there, this tip up here. And this isn't the best pen for this, but it's the one I have on hand right now. Something with a little bit of a sharper tip, whether it's a fine point pen or a pencil, would work fine. And we're just going to trace out the rest of it. So we're going to trace around this. You want to make sure you're not moving it, keeping it nice and firm. And we'll just go around. And there we go. We'll cut this shape out as well. Switching over the scissors. And I think I forgot to mark one of the edges. So we'll go ahead and cut off that edge as well. So now we have our two pieces to use for our runners. And we know that this stair width is 1 1/16 inch. If we want to make that a little bit bigger so there's a little bit of an overhang, we can do that. So we can go ahead and do 1 1/4 inch strips, and we just have to decide how wide they are. So we want to go maybe, let's go ahead for playability's sake, we'll go ahead and do them 3 inches wide. That'll give us enough room to have 2 rows of people going up. So we need 4 runners that are 3 inches long. So we'll mark out 3 inches here, 3 inches here, and then we'll go ahead and mark out each of the runners. So we need 4 of them at 1 1/4 inches. So we'll mark out this line every 1 1/4 inches. Same on the other side. And connect the dots. Then we'll cut it out. I'll cut off the line a little bit there. But that's okay, we're making junk terrain. This stuff is really forgiving. It's great for beginners, and it's great for, if you're a more advanced crafter, it's a great time if you're trying to just get through a project really quickly. You don't want to take the time to do everything really precise. It's more of a speed build. You can just crank this stuff out without worrying about making little mistakes like that you would normally take your time with. So we've got our 4 runners, we've got our stair lengths. And we're going to use hot glue to glue it on. So we'll go ahead and start with the top. Put a little bit of hot glue. And we'll leave a little bit of an edge there. And we'll attach the other side. We'll go ahead and do the bottom one to make sure it's all square. And then we'll attach the other two. All right, there we go. Now we got our staircase. It should butt up right nicely right to there. So we'll go ahead and attach this with some more hot glue. First thing we want to do is just kind of want to clean up that edge just a little bit. This would be better if this was a perfectly straight line, but it's not, so we'll just try to clean up this edge just a little bit. The nice thing about having it up against this butting edge here is we can also glue it up against here. So we'll go ahead and give this a nice healthy amount of glue all along this edge and here. And we'll just sporadically put a pretty good amount of it here as well. Sorry if I was off camera, just put in some glue here and there, because this isn't going to be seen later on. It doesn't matter how much we put there. We'll line it up, stick it on. So I realized I made a little bit of a mistake, but that's the great thing about crafting is it's okay to make mistakes. The more mistakes you make, the better you get at fixing them. And a lot of times you learn great things from fixing your mistakes. So the last time I made these, I didn't actually put any overhang on these stairs. I had them flush. But I thought that it might look a little bit better with that extra overhang. And we can definitely leave it on this side, but I realized after I put the glue on that having the edge hanging out on this side kind of prevents you from gluing this against it. So we're gonna go ahead and just trim that up. All right, let's try that again. So again, just gonna load this back up with some glue and load up this edge. Hopefully it's gonna work better this time. All right, much better. And so something else we're gonna do is we're gonna be adding some junk on top of this that's gonna help give us an extra attachment by bridging this gap. So it's not just gonna be this line of glue holding this onto here. Okay, up next we're on to the medium-sized one. This one's a lot smaller, so we're just gonna go ahead and go with a ladder. So there's lots of ways you can make a ladder. If you've ever seen these dollar store the dollar store hair curlers, these can be cut out to make really nice ladders, but it's a little bit too sci-fi industrial looking, a little bit too clean for what I'm going for here with the orc terrain, so I've decided to opt in for using these coffee stirs. So we're going to roughly mark out the height we want it to be. So break off an end. We want it to be clean, so I'll go ahead and snip it for the bottom. And then, let's see, we'll actually want it to be over here to add some support while we're at it, so we don't have to put in a support pole. We'll break off the excess because it's okay for it to be rough at the top. We'll match the other side. We'll lay it out. This isn't actually going to be functional as far as putting minis on it, so it doesn't matter too much. Let's see where we want to position it. So we can position it about here. So about this far apart works. Go ahead and snip off. We'll go ahead and just break these off in the middle. And we'll snip off the excess after it's glued on. So we'll go ahead and start at the top, running out of glue. So a little spot and spot. We'll attach one of those pieces on. You can make it flush on one side and let the other side that has the circle on it, or the rounded edge, we'll let that hang off. We'll do one at the bottom. We'll make sure it's pretty square. We'll go ahead and do a couple more as we go up. All right. We'll go ahead and put a drop on each one of these. And we'll place one more popsicle stick or coffee stirrer on top. And then after it's all assembled, we can go ahead and trim off the excess. All right, so we can kind of play around with the positioning of this. You can always trim up the sprue anywhere if you feel like it's getting in the way. And we'll go ahead and put glue on either side. And some right in the middle. And we'll stick it into place. Okay, up next we're going to be decorating it. So I've done this before, and I will tell you that preparing the stuff that you're going to be using along the way as you go takes way more time than stockpiling a bunch of it ahead of time and then just grabbing bits and pieces as you go. When we're decorating it, we're going to be channeling our inner orc construction worker, and we're just going to be slapping stuff together left and right without a whole lot of organization or order. So the things that I'm going to be using are some lightweight chipboard. This is the really flexible stuff. If you don't have the actual craft paper, that's totally fine. You can use cereal boxes, any sort of really thin packaging paper like that. It's basically really thick construction paper. We're going to be using corrugated paper. So you can get this at the craft store or on Amazon or online, but it's going to look like corrugated metal once painted up. We got some wooden coffee stir sticks that we're going to chop up a little bit. We've got these arrow heart-shaped type skewers that I got at the dollar store. They're for like cocktails. And then we've got every sci-fi terrain crafter's best friend, granny grating or plastic canvas. Once again, you can get this at your local craft store or you can get it online. So all we're going to be doing is we'll kind of tear off the ends of the sticks to kind of give them a little rough wood shape. I'm probably going to cut off the hearts on these and just use the arrow side. I think that side is going to look a little bit better. And then for the big pieces of these three things, all we're going to be doing is cutting them into a bunch of different random shapes, trying to not follow any rhyme or reason and really make it look like all this stuff was built from a scrap pile. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, everybody, first of all, I want to apologize. This is my first episode and I'm brand new to filmmaking or video making. And when I was filming, my camera ran out of storage space and it corrupted a few of my video files, including this one where I decorated the main large structure. The good news is it's really simple and we're going to follow the same steps for the smaller ones. So I just want to show you what I've done so far. All I've done, I started off on the floor and I put down some of the broken off end coffee stirrers and I just laid them out all the way across. This is especially good if your sprue has a bunch of pieces missing to where there's big empty holes. You can use the coffee stirrers to kind of patch those up and add some strength. After that, I just started putting glue onto all of the bits and pieces. I have my little pile organized out right here and just started slapping them on in random spots, covered up the stairs some, all over the floor surface. If you want to do the inside surface, that's good too. And I put the arrows up on top as kind of spikes and covered the inside there. And just did the same thing all the way around, preserving the window slots to look out of. So I'll go ahead and show you that same step-by-step process on the smaller ones. Okay, so after assembling decorating the smaller structure, the medium-sized one, I went ahead and covered all of the internal walls as well as the external walls, and I decided that I actually like it a lot better. It definitely hides the fact a little bit better that you're just building stuff with sprues, and I think it'll actually make it a little bit easier to paint, so you won't have so much exposed metal pipe or metal structure that you have to pick out and paint metallic. So I think I'm going to go back to the larger structure that I'd already finished and go ahead and finish covering all the internal walls. I think this is actually a lot nicer and it kind of adds a little bit of thickness and rigidity to it as well. And I'm all done putting all of the decorations on all of the pieces. We have our large structure here, the medium structure here, the small obscuring terrain here, and the fence type structure here that you can make a bunch of for building fences and walls. So we're all done decorating and building. So up next, we're going to be doing the painting. Okay, so I just finished the first step of the paint job, and all we're going to do is I took it outside and I gave all of it a nice good coat with Rust-Oleum primer with this nice rust color. You should be able to find this at any hardware store. And you just make sure you give it a good coat. It might take 2 or 3 coats. There's lots of cracks and crevices. You're going to want to hit it from a bunch of different angles. Do the best you can to get a good coverage, especially if you're trying to cover up any of those neon colors from the paper. You're going to want to let it dry really good. And then for the next step, we're going to do something that a little bit different than the way you would normally use this step. And so we're actually going to give it a black Mod Podge coating, which is just Mod Podge and black paint. And we're also going to thin it down with a little bit of water. I use this stuff all of the time. I learned it from Black Magic Craft. But normally you would use this as the very first step as a base coat and to protect the stuff that you've built, especially if you're working with foam. But the way I'm doing this a little bit differently is instead of having it being a full opaque black coat on the bottom, I used a little bit less black paint and I thinned it with a little bit of water. And so it's actually going to almost work like a really, really heavy wash over top of this while also adding some protection to all of the paper bits. So it's not going to be fully opaque. What we want is a decent amount of black coverage, but we still want it to be able to see a decent amount of this red rust color shining through. Okay, for this next step, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be dry brushing with a metallic gunmetal color. You're not going to want to use cheap craft paint for this. You can if you have to, if it's all you have, but it doesn't work nearly as good. It's not opaque enough. So you're going to want to use something like Citadel or Army Paint or one of the other metallic gunmetals made for miniature painting. You're going to put some on your brush. You're going to get most of it off on a paper towel. Not too much at first, because the first thing you're going to do is you're going to do a heavy dry brushing on all of the granny grading material, so it's almost entirely metallic. Then you're going to want to take most of it off your paintbrush so there's only a little bit left, and you want to just lightly flick it back and forth across the entire structure to pick up all the details and highlights and make it look metallic. For this next step, we're adding rust effects, and I'm using a cheap foam brush that I ripped bits of the tip off so it was more jagged. And I'm dipping it into 3 different colors, a lighter orange, a more vibrant orange, and a brown. That you're getting a little bit of all 3 in different spots on the brush to make the color tone more varied, and you're just going to speckle it all over. Okay, up next, after the last step is completely dry, we're going to add on a black wash. So this is a cheap, easy craft wash or black wash you can make at home. There's lots of videos online on how to make these, but essentially it's just a couple parts of water to 1 part of black craft paint, and you're going to add in something like Dawn dish soap or Jet Dry to break the surface tension. You're going to mix it up good, and we're just going to slather it all over everything, making sure it drips into all the cracks and crevices, and this is going to add a lot of depth and tonal variation. It's going to make everything look a lot better. So apply it liberally. It's going to dry a little bit lighter than it looks once you put it on. Okay, this is the last step. Now, my black wash made it pretty dark, a little bit darker than I want it to look. So I'm just going to go over the whole thing with one more very light dry brush with that same metallic color. I want to make sure there's not very much paint at all on my brush. I'm just trying to pick up some of those highlights and make everything look a little bit more metallic again, but we don't want to get rid of all the work we just did with that black wash. So go light on it. You can always add more. And if your black wash is a little bit lighter than mine and you think it looks good the way it is, then you might be able to skip this step and call it done. And we are finished. If you use these simple speed painting techniques and the time-saving technique using the sander on the sprues, you can easily knock out an entire table's worth of terrain in a weekend. There's a million more structure designs you can come up with using these techniques, so let your imagination run wild. If you have the time to spare, there are also so many more things you can do for the paint job on these to really take them to the next level, or even have them themed for a specific army or faction. I just want to thank you for joining me in my very first episode. It's been a steep learning curve making my first video, and I want to get better and better at creating content for you all. I've already learned so much just making this first one. I know it was a long video, so I plan on making my next ones smaller and easier to digest. But if you like what you see, please give this video a like and subscribe so I can grow the channel and keep the content coming. If you want to give me support more directly, you can support me on Patreon. And I'm going to be doing a drawing for a giveaway for the first 100 Patreon supporters of any level. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video, where we're going to make some cool additions to this terrain set to help bring your table to life and add some fun game elements for your next battles. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.